The wind moaned across the barren valley like a restless spirit, swirling dust around the lonely wooden cabin that stood on the edge of the desert. Inside, Grandma Eliza May struggled to keep her tiny fire alive. Her hands, frail, worn by time, trembled as she placed one last log onto the dying flame. The soft crackle echoed in the quiet, lighting her weathered face in the humble space she called home. It had been 5 long winters since her husband passed, and her son had gone east searching for work. Now all she had left were her prayers, a few jars of preserved fruit, and the company of her 2 dogs who kept watch over the porch. The prairie outside was empty, a vast ocean of gold under a fading sun. As she stirred a thin pot of cornmeal porridge that night, the dogs began barking, first low, then louder until their cries filled the night. Eliza froze. Visitors were rare this far from town. Grabbing the old shotgun from behind the door, she peered through the cracked window. Through the moonlit haze, dark figures appeared, horsemen. 15 of them, wrapped in tattered blankets, their faces shadowed and weary. Her heart raced, but she didn't raise the gun when she saw their condition. They weren't soldiers or bandits. They were men starving and broken. One dismounted slowly and approached with open hands. "We mean no harm, old mother," he said, his voice soft and tired. "We are hungry. No food for many sons." The fear in her heart shifted to sorrow. She saw their thin frames, hollow eyes, and cracked lips. They were Navajo, men many settlers feared, men her neighbors would have turned away. But looking at them, she saw no threat, only human desperation. She lowered her shotgun and whispered, "Stay, I'll see what I can do." Her pantry held little, a few loaves of coarse bread, a handful of beans, and a single jar of honey she'd saved for her son's return. Still, she worked late into the night, kneading dough, baking bread, her old hands trembling from fatigue. When the smell of fresh bread filled the air, the Navajo men sat outside by the fire she built for them. They ate in silence, their eyes wet with gratitude. The tall man and the leader Hayden came to her afterward, his voice solemn. "You are not afraid of us." Eliza smiled gently. "Fear fades when you've seen enough hunger in your life." The man bowed his head. "You gave life to dying men. We will not forget." At dawn they were gone. The only sign they'd been there was a small wooden carving left on her porch, an eagle with wings spread wide. She smiled, touched it gently, and whispered a prayer. But that afternoon, as she hung laundry, the earth began to tremble. A low rumble swept across the valley. When she looked up, her breath caught in her chest. Over the ridge poured hundreds of Navajo warriors, a sea of horses, banners and spears glittering under the morning sun. She stumbled back, clutching the porch post. The same leader rode in front, his eyes fixed on her. He raised a hand and the mighty force stopped. Dust hung in the air as silence fell. Then he dismounted and approached her slowly. "Mother," he said softly, "you gave bread to the hungry. You saw us as men, not enemies." He turned and gestured to his warriors. They brought baskets filled with corn, blankets, and dried meat, now offerings piled at her feet. "For you," he said. "The valley remembers kindness." Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "I only did what was right," she whispered. The man smiled. "That is why the earth remembers your name." As the sun dipped low, the warriors rode off again, the sound of their hooves echoing through the valley like a heartbeat. She stood there long after they disappeared, clutching the carved eagle, realizing she had witnessed something sacred, a bond forged not by blood, but by mercy. Winter returned with a vengeance. Eliza survived on what the Navajo had gifted her: the corn, the dried meat, the warmth of their blankets. The valley slept under snow, and she often stared at the wooden eagle, remembering that morning of thunder and gratitude. Then one gray afternoon, she saw smoke, black and thick, rising over the eastern ridge. Soon came the shouts, the distant gunfire, the frightened gallop of a horse pulling a broken wagon. "Raiders!" a man screamed as he passed her gate. "They're burning everything." Eliza's stomach turned cold. She looked toward the hill. Behind her cabin, the same one the Navajo leader had pointed to. His voice echoed in her mind. "If ever danger comes to this valley, light a fire on your hill. We will come." Her hands shook as she gathered dry wood and straw, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Step by step she climbed the hill, her knees weak, the wind biting her face. At the top she built her pile and whispered, "Lord, I don't know if they'll see me, but I have faith." The first strike of flint sparked. The second caught. Flames roared upward, bright and desperate, smoke curling high into the cold sky. As night fell, she could see the raiders' torches flickering in the distance. 20 men, armed and shouting. Her heart pounded, but then another sound joined the wind. Hooves. Many hooves. The earth itself began to tremble. Out from the far valley came a river of motion, shadows of mounted warriors. 100 strong, their spears glinting in the firelight. The Navajo had come. The raiders saw them and froze, terror flashing in their eyes. What followed was swift and merciless. The warriors swept through the valley like a storm, their cries echoing off the canyon walls. Within minutes, the danger was gone and the outlaws scattered and broken. When silence finally fell, the gray-haired leader rode up the hill to where Eliza stood, her fire blazing behind her. He dismounted and bowed deeply. "You called, Mother," he said. "And we came." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I didn't think you'd remember me." He smiled. "The people. Remember those who feed the hungry. We remember the ones who see us as human." He placed something in her trembling hands, a new carving, shaped like a heart, bound with an eagle feather. "So you will know," he said, "that even when we are gone, our sons will come when the fire calls." As dawn painted the valley gold, the warriors rode away once more, their silhouettes fading into the mist. Eliza watched until the last sound of hooves vanished. Then she sat beside her dying fire, clutching the eagle and the heart together, whispering, "Sometimes the smallest kindness can awaken the greatest loyalty." That night the valley was still. Yet when she closed her eyes, she could almost hear the distant sound of drums, steady, peaceful, alive. If this story touched your soul, if you believe that kindness can still change hearts in a divided world, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching tales of courage, compassion, and humanity. Each week, we bring you stories that remind us that goodness still lives, in strangers, in memories, and sometimes in the most unexpected hearts. Subscribe now and keep the fire of kindness burning.